The story unfolds as, when martial arts cultivation was in its beginning stages, monsters and demons rushed out from various space rift portals and threatened the existence of every living creature on Earth, and caused chaos everywhere. But in the midst of all this chaos, Lu Xing's consciousness traverses time and space, transporting him 10,000 years ahead in a dream world where the world had been destroyed by this massive catastrophe, leaving only ruins of civilization behind. The world was filled with several monsters that rushed out of space rifts continuously. The traces of human civilization had been long gone. However, amidst all this chaos stood a man with immense power and an unshakable spirit. He stood before the giant monster with a calm demeanor, with energy flowing out of his body. The monster looked like a colossal centipede, reaching the heavens with its size. The man's eyes blazed with bright energy as he took his stance to counter the colossal centipede. He just used a swift offensive technique, resulting in unleashing a devastating blow toward the monster. This seemingly heaven-defying blow incinerated everything in its way. The man looked like a martial arts grandmaster. A mystical glow can be seen radiating from his body. Have you ever woken up from a nightmare and found yourself in another nightmare? Lu Xing was now. Lu Xing! A stern voice exploded in his ears like a thunderclap. Lu Xing looked up dazedly, his face still showing the bewilderment and confusion of having just woken up from sleep. All his classmates were laughing at him, for always sleeping in class. The middle-aged man on the podium pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose and stared at him fiercely with a look seethed with hatred. There are just over 200 days left before the college entrance exam. You don't even think about working hard for your exams, yet still have the heart to sleep in class? With this attitude, even if you graduate and go to a construction site to move bricks, they may not want you. Do you know what the minimum blood standard for cement workers on construction sites is these days? Lu Xing replied, Teacher, it's 0.8. And has your blood chi value reached 0.8? Lu Xing lowered his head, rubbing his swollen temples while obediently listening to the class teacher castigate him. The teacher then dismissed the class. As the students were leaving, the little fatty sitting in front of him turned his head to look at him. Having nightmares again? His name was Lu Qiming, and he was considered one of Lu Xing's few friends. Lu Xing nodded, not saying anything, but with a strong look of helplessness in his eyes. He had been dreaming the same dream frequently for 3 days. Lu Xing could not describe what kind of dream it was, only remembered that the scene in the dream was very dilapidated, desolate, and depressing. He stood bewildered on top of a wilderness, with roaming monsters all around. It was a nightmare, there was no doubt about it. Because after encountering this dream, he became very drowsy, and the quality of sleep turned incredibly poor. Although he slept for more than 12 hours a day, he looked like he had been sleep-deprived due to insomnia continuously for the past few days. So much so that during these 3 days, Lu Xing's blood chi value, BQV, had slipped by 0.02. Lu Xing's mood was simply terrible. Lu Xing, heading to the internet cafe, huh? Facing Lu Qiming's invitation, Lu Xing shook his head. No, I'm not going. I'll go home. Going home so early? It's not like your style. Let's go to the cafe. I'll pay for all the drinks and charges today. Lu Qiming patted his chest and sincerely invited. But Lu Xing still shook his head and explained. I really don't want to go. I want to go back early to catch up on my sleep. You slept all day in class today, and you're still sleepy? Lu Qiming had an exaggerated expression on his face. Lu Xing did not bother to explain further. Lu Qiming still wanted to persuade Lu Xing when several boys called him from afar. Lu Qiming took a final look at Lu Xing, and did not say anything else. He left Lu Xing and sped towards the other few boys running ahead. These people bustled towards the school's entrance, and quickly scattered away in all directions. Lu Xing let out a soft sigh as the thoughts in his mind began to churn. He had almost forgotten that he had been living in this world for 18 years. Lu Xing's memories of his previous life had turned very vague, and sometimes he even wondered if it was all just a dream. In that world of his previous life, there were no martial arts, and there were no monsters that ran out of the cracks in the ground. The sun was setting down with a warm glow spreading over the city as Lu Xing reached his old apartment. Lu Xing pushed open the door to his home. He saw his dad, Lu Dehai, lying on the arm of the sofa, and his mother, Xing Yufan, tearing open a plaster to find a suitable spot on Lu Dehai's back. Lu Xing noticed his dad's patched up back. His eyes stung for a moment. He shouted, "I'm home!" Despite the injuries, his parents' faces lit up at the sight of their son. Lu Xing shook his head and dragged his school bag in the direction of his room. Lu Dehai quickly got dressed, but the bandages can clearly show the immense effort that he put into work to provide for his family. Lu Xing stopped halfway, turned his head to the sofa, and whispered, "Why not go back to buy a blood combustion device? That thing can stimulate the blood, relax the tendons, and activate the body. Massage healing will also be very useful." But his father, ever strong-willed, flexed his bicep and said, "Hey, what kind of injury do you think I have? I will be fine in a few days. That is money that we might as well put aside and buy you tonics." Suddenly his father took out 2 small bottles which he presented to Lu Xing. It was a new medicine to increase blood value, and it costs a huge amount of $20,000, which is a fortune for a family like theirs. Overwhelmed by his father's gentle care, Lu Xing struggled to hold back his tears. His parents asked him, "How is your recent blood Qi value? Did you break through to 0.85? I saw on the news today that the cutoff for this year's college entrance examination for undergraduates will be increased by 0.01. I know, I'll go back to my room to exercise." Lu Xing's chest immediately tightened as he heard those words, and he rushed into his room. Lu Xing closed the door to his room and breathed a sigh of relief. Only when he stayed in this small room that belonged to him alone did he have a chance to relax. Lu Xing put down his school bag, took off his coat and pants, and then sat down on the yoga mat. After calming down a bit, Lu Xing took a deep breath and silently recited in his heart, "13th set of radio gymnastics, start." Subsequently, Lu Xing's body began to pose one movement after another. These movements were somewhat similar to yoga, but they were very different from yoga, and it was quite apt to use gymnastics to describe them. The World Martial Alliance's 24 forms of martial refinement are said to be created by the masters of the alliance based on ancient yoga, ancient martial arts, ancient jiu-jitsu, etc. They are most suitable for giving beginners in martial arts a foundation. Ever since the world changed drastically more than 300 years ago, when a rift appeared in heaven and earth, and numerous strange and horrible monsters emerged from the earth, and the trajectory of the world's development changed completely. After most of the thermal weapons lost their effectiveness in fighting the monsters, human beings began to look for new ways and means to defend themselves. Perhaps because of the emergence of monsters, and facing the enormous pressure of genocide, a certain genetic lock in the human body was broken. Individual strength rose to peaks that were never before thought possible. Martial arts developed at a rapid pace, changing day by day. But even so, on the battlefield, fighting against the monsters that encroached and swallowed up human territory, humans were still at an absolute disadvantage. And every day another town or city fell into the hands of these monsters, and the human population continues to dwindle. This is what the class teacher told Lu Xing and the others from time to time. Lu Xing stopped practicing those body movement exercises and sat on his yoga mat, slowly adjusting his breathing. He did the 24 sets of body movements of the body refining technique 3 times in one breath. A thin layer of sweat perspiration out of his body, and his originally pale face had a few more patches of redness. So far, Lu Xing hadn't found the reason for his nightmares. Lu Xing rested while having nonsensical thoughts. While he was thinking, sleep came to him in tides and waves. Lu Xing unconsciously yawned, his eyelids drooped, and his body slowly lay down and gradually drifted off to sleep. The leaden gray sky, black earth, everywhere filled with a trace of gray fog. Depression, despair, and desolation were everywhere. The first thing that Lu Xing saw when he woke up was this scene in front of him. It's this nightmare again. Lu Xing was completely helpless. Lu Xing vigorously grabbed the flesh on his arms and face, trying to wake himself up from the dream, but to no avail. Unless a specific point in time did not meet, he would remain here, stuck in this nightmare. Very quickly, the gray mist not far to his left dispersed, and a tall, stiff human form appeared behind him. The figure's complexion was gray, the eye sockets had sunken deep inside. It had no eyes, only a pair of hollow sockets staring out. There is a long gash on its face. One could clearly see the gray facial bones, blackened flesh, and blood. The zombie jumped at Lu Xing, resulting in him collapsing on the ground. In previous nightmares, Lu Xing was in the process of constantly running away, escaping, and gradually losing consciousness, and then he'd wake up. But this time the zombie appeared beside him. So, there was no escape. The zombie opened its jaws to attack Lu Xing. But luckily, he avoided its attack. This time, Lu Xing changed his mind. No more running. Anyway, this is a dream. Even if I'm bitten, it does not matter. If I die in the dream, I might wake up faster. Thinking on this line, Lu Xing simply took the initiative to take a big step. Wind God Kick! Lu Xing shouted the name of the move that he had read in the novel in his previous life. He gained momentum and kicked the tall zombie in the chest. The tall zombie thumped back, and its clumsy body became unstable under the huge impact. It fell on its back to the ground. With this kick, Lu Xing's confidence instantly increased. Lu Xing found a watermelon-sized stone a few meters away. Lu Xing grabbed the stone and aimed it at the head of the tall zombie. The weak point of the zombies in the movie is their heads. This should be okay. Lu Xing mumbled under his breath, and his hand pressed hard. The crisp sound of broken bones rang out. The watermelon-sized stone was embedded into the face of the tall zombie, and the body of the tall zombie twitched twice, and then it went completely motionless. Lu Xing could even feel the sound of his heart beating violently. This still doesn't seem to help me wake up. Lu Xing muttered and was about to move away. At the same time, he saw that the tall zombie in front of him collapsed like gravel, and quickly wither and disappear under a few breaths. And there were wisps of black threads of smoke steaming out from within the weathered corpse of the tall zombie. These quickly took an arrow-like form and fiercely rushed into Lu Xing's chest. Lu Xing was stunned. Before he had time to react, he felt a hot stream dispersing from his chest, accompanied by numerous strands of memories, like movie images, rapidly passing through his mind. The main character was a tall, handsome teenager. The first half of the movie seemed dull and boring, basically the images of the teenager's painstaking cultivation training. The second half became heavy. One battle after another. Each battle was accompanied by blood and death. One by one, the partners around the teenager diminished. The sky was always gray, sadness, and pain filled every inch of the memory. Finally, the picture was fixed in the broken city walls. The sky was covered with horrible beasts, and large swathes of black fog sweeping over. That world was about to be engulfed by darkness, and before the despair and depression, even Lu Xing could not help but be moved by it. Lu Xing slowly opened his eyes, and his head was filled with strong melancholy. It was as if he had watched a long movie. What the hell did this guy go through before he died? Lu Xing muttered and whispered. There was no doubt that the memory he had just received should be the memory of the tall zombie that he had killed before he got reanimated. Also, why did I get his memories even though I killed him? Because it was in a dream? Lu Xing's heart churned with many doubts. Unfortunately, there was no one who could answer these questions. The answer to everything could only be found by himself. Lu Xing gathered his mood. Soon, another wandering zombie appeared in front of Lu Xing's eyes. This time Lu Xing was not afraid and directly dashed up to the zombie wearing a yellow helmet. With a swift technique, he snapped the head of the zombie unconsciously. Looking at the head of the zombie that rolled to his feet like a broken leather ball, Lu Xing froze for a moment. He looked at his hands, a little incredulous. When did I become so strong? Lu Xing recalled the series of movements he had just made. As if he had already used it countless times in real combat, it had almost become instinctive, and he used it subconsciously. That kind of precision and coldness was a realm he didn't even dare to think about before. Could it be that I absorbed the memories of the jumpsuit zombie? Lu Xing analyzed. Lu Xing absorbed his memories and naturally inherited his skills. It's simply unbelievable. Lu Xing couldn't help but sigh. Easily gaining someone else's lifetime experience if only this wasn't a dream. Because it was a dream, Whatever unimaginably incredulous events that occurred felt normal. It's strange to say that Lu Xing has obviously realized that he was dreaming, but he just couldn't wake up. At this time, the zombie that he had just killed began to wind up. The same arrows emerged from a black line of smoke and seeped into Lu Xing's body. Lu Xing hurriedly absorbed this part of the memory. This time the memory left Lu Xing with some disappointment. The helmet zombie was just an ordinary plumbing repairman before he was reanimated. The memories that interested him were very limited, almost nothing. The only thing of value was probably from the memories of the helmet zombie that showed that he and the jumpsuit zombie had come from the same place, Base 1359. It looks like I need to find Base 1359, maybe there I can about the truth behind this dream, Lu Xing said to himself. He has now completely treated this dream as a puzzle plus upgrade type of game. Hunting the zombies roaming around the wilderness would provide him with the experience to upgrade, and the clues to proceed to the next step. As for what the clues point to, Lu Xing didn't know and didn't care. But at this time, a dull sound came to his ears. Bang, bang, bang. Along with this sound, everything around Lu Xing became unreal and unstable. Lu Xing slowly opened his eyes. A violent smashing sound of the door woke up Lu Xing. He struggled to open his eyes and slowly tried to sit up. Then he heard a clear and cold female voice come in through the door. "Dinner is ready! How long are you going to nestle in your room?" Lu Xing stood up and opened the door. It was the voice of his sister, Lu Qinghe. Lu Xing could imagine Lu Qinghe's current expression outside the door to his room. There was a trace of impatience within the coldness. "Got it, be right there," Lu Xing answered. Lu Qinghe had always despised him as a brother. They had a better relationship during their childhood. Lu Xing was about to turn 18 this year, but his blood chi value was still 0.8 combat power index and practical combat class results were also a complete mess. But Lu Qinghe was different. She had just turned 16 this year, but her last blood chi value test had already exceeded 1.0. Her combat power index was over 100, and she was also very talented in practical combat. Following this trend, it would be possible for her to get a scholarship for a major in martial arts university in 2 years. The cliché combo of a mediocre brother and a genius sister. Perhaps in Lu Qinghe's heart, if there wasn't the burden of her mediocre brother, she could have gotten all the family resources poured into her right now, and she could have reached an even greater level. At that moment, Lu Xing also regained his lucidity, and he became aware that he had just experienced another nightmare. But unlike in the past, this time, after the nightmare, Lu Xing didn't feel any sense of discomfort anywhere. Instead, his physical condition was unexpectedly good. No sense of fatigue, no drowsiness, my whole body feels like it's full of energy. Lu Xing was a little surprised. He tried to remember everything he had experienced in the dream. Lu Xing swung his fist in the air. Even my strength feels like it has increased. A few moments later, Lu Xing was shocked. All those memories that I got from the zombies, I still remember them all vividly. The numerous combat skills that I inherited are all still deeply engraved into my muscle memory, so much so that this was especially unbelievable. If Lu Xing felt that his strength had increased, wouldn't that mean his blood chi value had also increased? The blood chi value can be increased like this through dreams. Lu Xing couldn't believe it, doubting that these were all just his own delusions. Naturally, the most direct way to verify whether it was real or not would be to go and do a full physical test. Let's eat first, then I'll go and find a martial arts training center to test it. Lu Xing quickly calmed down his excitement, cleaned up a bit, then walked out of his room. Lu Xing buried his head and gulped rice into his mouth, as if he had been starving for days. As he picked up the empty bowl, he ate clean. Handing it to his mother Jing Yufan to ask for another bowl, he suddenly noticed that the 3 people at the dinner table were looking at him in a strange way. Only then did Lu Xing realize that the amount of food he ate today does indeed seem to be excessive. "Forget it, I'm full." Lu Xing hesitated for a moment, and was about to take the bowl back. But it was snatched away by Lu Dehai. "What do you mean? How can you stay hungry at home? Wife, please go and cook another pot of rice and stir-fry 2 more dishes." Mother Jing Yufan nodded and then stood up and left. Lu Dehai looked rather pleased, looking at Lu Xing with a smile, as he said, "Boys tend to be like this when they are growing, they never feel full no matter how much they eat." The head goes up. Lu Xing nodded his head. "How much can it be increased?" "He'll be 18 soon." Next to him, Lu Qinghe shoved a spoon into her mouth while making a disdainful noise. After the meal, Lu Xing said a quick goodbye to his family and directly headed out the door. He couldn't wait to test his current values in all aspects. Hongchuan Martial Arts Hall! Lu Xing arrived at his destination following the navigation on his phone, stopping in front of the martial arts hall closest to his home. The martial arts hall wasn't very big, and even the decor was nothing special. It was just an ordinary private martial arts hall. The owner of this martial arts hall, Anai Hongchuan, is a level 4 martial artist who specializes in traditional fist techniques, and he also was one of the top 10 in the 23rd annual Beihai City Martial Arts Conference. The martial arts hall had an enrollment advertisement posted on the door that Lu Xing noticed. Based on the standards released by the Global Martial Union, a martial artist with a peak blood chi value of more than 200 and a combat power index of more than 100,000 would qualify as a level 4. Lu Xing roughly compared himself to Anai Hongchuan in his head and got an exaggerated result. As the martial arts level increases, the difficulty to reach the next level also increases. Level 4 martial artists, even in the entire Beihai city, are regarded as a group of experts, with dignified status. At the front door of the martial arts school was a reception desk. The receptionist was a girl of around 20 years old, appearing quite beautiful. Seeing Lu Xing, the girl quickly put on a professional smile and took the initiative to greet him. "Is this student here to enroll in our martial arts hall's martial arts training classes?" Lu Xing shook his head. "No, I'm here to test my blood chi value and combat power index." The receptionist girl swept a glance at the school uniform Lu Xing was wearing, and gave a nod. Based on her discernment, she could naturally see that Lu Xing was one of those kids from an ordinary family, so there would be no point in wasting her time on him. "Go down the hallway and proceed to room 8, there are devices for the test inside." The receptionist girl had a fairly good attitude and didn't look down on Lu Xing. The device for testing the blood chi value was somewhat similar to a spherical ball. Lu Xing raised his hand. As he placed his hand on the ball, it emits an aura that illuminated the entire room. A faint blue light appeared on the sphere, then the device emitted a soft beep sound, and a value popped up on the device's screen. It was 0.963 blood chi value. When Lu Xing saw the value, he couldn't help but clench his fist firmly even though he had already anticipated it. The blood chi value had really increased. He thought to himself, this proves that everything I obtained in that dream can really be brought to reality. This is no longer just a game of killing monsters and leveling up, instead, it is cultivation. Lu Xing held back his excitement. Now that he finally saw a glimpse of hope that could allow him to shine in the martial arts world, how could he not be excited and delighted? Let's measure the combat power index now. The device for testing combat power was much bigger, almost as tall as a person, and in the middle of the device was a padded groove. The test only required punching hard at the groove. Lu Xing took a deep breath, and his right arm muscles followed the trajectory of the techniques in his memory. He then threw a ferocious punch at the force measuring device. A number popped up on the force measuring device. The combat power index had reached 113. Lu Xing thought to himself. Last year, the undergraduate martial arts score line in Beihai City for blood chi value was 1.05, and the combat power index was 105. In other words, now I have almost reached the standard for the undergraduate line. Even if I can't enter the dream anymore, I will be able to safely enter any of the number 2 martial arts universities after the college entrance exam in just 200 days. Naturally, Lu Xing's current ambition didn't stop there. At this moment, Lu Xing keenly felt just how bright his road ahead had become. And all of this was due to a dream that he had just a few hours ago. After the test, Lu Xing quickly returned home. He couldn't wait to enter the dream world again and explore it. What? I actually can't fall asleep. Lu Xing stood up from his bed, slightly bewildered, scratching his head with a frustrated expression. Lu Xing looked at the time and eventually decided to do some pre-bedtime exercise. The exercise was naturally the 24 forms of body refining, which he called the 13th set of radio exercises. It just so happens that his blood qi value has increased a lot, and it needs to be consolidated. Lu Xing followed the 24 forms of body refining that he had done countless times on the yoga mat, and started practicing late at night. But not long after the practice, Lu Xing felt that something was wrong. Wait, how can I perform movements like this? Lu Xing suddenly stopped his movements, with a slightly strange expression. But just now, he distinctly felt himself subconsciously performing a different set of movements. And that set of movements was something he had never learned before. Lu Xing quickly understood what was wrong. He had absorbed the memories of martial arts from the two uniformed zombies, and alongside their combat skills and experience, he had also inherited the memories of their practice. With curiosity in mind, Lu Xing decided to practice the body refining technique from the memories of the two uniformed zombies. He thought in mind, the movements are considerably larger than the body refining technique I practice now, with over 200 forms. Some of the movements appear difficult, but with the memories he inherited from those two zombies, it's equivalent to having practiced it countless times, making it easy to perform. As soon as Lu Xing did one of the movements, a certain part of his body produced a tingling sensation similar to an electric shock. The sensation was extremely pleasant, as if a wave of warmth was flowing through his body. It felt so good that he nearly let out a moan. It was as if Lu Xing had discovered a whole new world all of a sudden. He began to focus on practicing the body refining technique. At this moment, if a second person was present in the room, they would see Lu Xing's body continuously twisting into one weird movement after another. These movements were connected together with an unexpected and wonderfully harmonious sense of grace. And throughout the process, Lu Xing's body continued to tremble slightly. Lu Xing finally performed the last movement. His entire body collapsed on the yoga mat as if it was falling apart. An intense sense of hunger passed through Lu Xing's brain. Didn't I eat dinner just a few hours ago? Lu Xing was feeling incredible. The empty stomach constantly reminded him that his body was now in dire need of energy. It was clear to him that regular food will not suffice. He required high-level medicine to maintain his newly found strength. But the cost of these medicines was enormous, and he recognized that he would need to find means to earn money to fund his medicines. That's all for today. If you like the next part of this manhwa, just comment below. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to like, subscribe and comment for getting epic content on this channel. See you next time.